Greenbackville took shape in the late 1860s with an influx of men anxious to make a killing on oysters in the Chincoteague Bay. About 10 years after Greenbackville was founded, another town sprang up like a mushroom right next door. We have heard the story, the man who built his house on the sand. In Franklin City, it was built on the marsh. House after house, and oyster packing house after oyster packing house. The people who flocked to Franklin City were not all watermen. There had to be some infrastructure and supporting industries, none more important than railroad workers. With the rail line came crewmen to work on the trains. Main Street was beautiful and prosperous, and the town had only a 100-foot wide strip with railroad tracks serving a daily train. There was a time when quite a few folks pinned their dreams on the rising star of Franklin City. The railroad reached Greenbackville in 1876, and the bay was full of oysters that city folks were scooping up like pancakes. For about 50 years, the sky seemed to be the limit. The founder, Franklin, planned his town to be geometrically perfect, with 3 streets going east-west and 5 cross streets intersecting them. From the historical records, it appears that Franklin City was the first developer-planned community on the eastern shore. You could get a hotel room for $2 a night. A man got a bed, hot water, and a shared toilet. There were excursion trains and freight trains. Tons of Chincoteague oysters were packed and shipped to city markets. In 1887, it is said, some 33,000 barrels of oysters left Franklin City by rail. Try to conjure up the vision of the town the way it must have looked around 1900, 1910. But then there was a big omen in 1941. The Franklin City Church was erected in 1895, but sparks from a passing train caused the church to go up in flames. It was a bad omen for the house that was built on sand. The school was built in 1913, 4 rooms on the first floor, 2 rooms and an assembly hall on the second. They said it could seat 500. The high school closed in the 1930s, the elementary in the 50s. The building is now in private hands. The Krusty Krab started out as a clam shack where watermen brought their clams from the bay. It was converted to a restaurant around 1999. The fire hall dates from 1956. The fire hall has replaced the school and the store as the anchor of the community. The building we see today dates from 2000. It is the institution, along with the church, that holds the town together, and it is often the scene of a great supper put on by the firemen or the church. This is Union Church. It dates from 1895. When the Franklin City Church burned in 41, the congregation voted to join forces with this church, and thus the name Union. Franklin City and Greenbackville, they're both towns with low ground. In a town with no surplus of ground, where to put the dearly departed? Land well outside Greenbackville was acquired for cemetery use. Each church had its own cemetery: Union Greenbackville Cemetery and Union Franklin Cemetery. In Franklin City, dig down a few feet and the ground becomes soggy. The grave would fill up with water. The casket would literally float. You just can't keep a good person down in Franklin City. Focus on the red roof. It was the site where Markland's Grill stood. It had a bar, grill, restaurant, and a dance floor. And it was here that John Markland built his dream house on the Chincoteague Bay. Its highest population may have reached 350. It prospered from 1876 to 1922. When the last train ran in the 1950s, Franklin City was well on its way to becoming a memory. After a storm swept high tides through the streets in March of '62, Franklin City was abandoned altogether and spent a number of years as a ghost town. A handful of its remaining homes have been reclaimed. In most recent years, there have been built 3 new dwellings, one of which serves as the Baywatch bed and breakfast. John Markland ultimately realized his dream, which he named Bella Vista. He has, from the wraparound balcony of his house, one of the most beautiful views on the shore. But now, in the case of old Franklin City, we know how it turned out. Like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall.